been shot in the head, majority of them been shot in the eye. So it was sniper work. So it was a deliberate act of murder on part of the regime. And there's no question about it. And there's thousands of photos will be shown around the world, you know, and we will be shown to the committee when it comes. I doubt it very much if the committee will have an free access to investigate. I don't think Bashar will ever put it, as the committee before, which came and he refused them entry to Dara, and I think will be exactly the same. He's not about to hand in all the evidence against him in a silver platter. So we know that the murder. I mean, there's a mass graves all over Hauran, which is my home territory. We know some of it. Some of it we dug out. We show the word. Mate,
Sorry to interrupt. I want to get to Rosemary Hollis's take on this. I mean, we were just showing pictures there of some of the protests and the crackdown, the violent crackdown in response to it, which has all been through the result of social media sites like Twitter and Facebook and so on. That's really the only outlet that we've had to find out what's going on inside Syria. But that doesn't seem to have deterred the Syrian authorities at all. I mean, people talked about the Hama massacre that happened in 1982 under Bashar al-Assad's father, and have said that something like that could never happen in this age of Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and so on. Yet it doesn't seem to have deterred the government so far.
Well, yes, but I think we've learnt that the protesters in all the Arab revolutions or revolts have talked about this passing the fear barrier, and they have shown great bravery in the face of repression. And that's an element in addition to the social media and the capacity of the internet to spread the word globally of the atrocities that are taking place. But that doesn't by itself bring victory, and you do have to have tremendous bravery in the face of this. There are casualties. We saw something similar with those who protested in Iran after the last parliamentary elections, which, I beg your pardon, presidential elections, which they really felt had been stolen, the demonstrators out in the streets, but the regime unleashed both its volunteer forces in plain clothes, essentially the same as the thuggery that you're seeing in Syria, and its own official security forces in uniform, and they beat up the demonstrators. There weren't so many deaths as you're seeing in Syria, but there were as many arrests, and some of the repression of those who are opposing the regime goes on. Now, in the face of this, for the UN to say that these are crimes against humanity, they very probably are. But it's like the Americans condemning Assad and saying he must go, UN condemning his actions and saying they must be held accountable doesn't mean that it'll happen.
Let's talk a little bit more, Rosemary Hollis, about what impact sanctions would have on Syria. I mean, the US sanctions alone may not have much of an impact, but then even when you add the EU sanctions as well, how much of an impact will that really have?
I think the crucial factor here is the isolation of the Assad regime regionally as well as internationally. In other words, he's failed to meet the expectations and the requests of the Saudis and the Turks, who were much more amenable to discussion and negotiation with him than the Americans. And now he's lost their support, lost their patience, as well as Europeans and the United States. He hasn't completely lost the Russians or the Chinese, and that's because they don't like the precedent of interference in sovereign states. So
yeah, I mean, this brings up a question I want to ask you, Rosemary Hollis. Is this, as long as he has, I mean, you mentioned Russia and China, as long as he has other options to go to as far as trade, then he'll just take his business elsewhere, won't he?
He can survive. That's the point. And Mr. Ashraf talked about how he doesn't have the money to keep up the repression. But then, you know, repression just requires some human beings to be brutal to other human beings. And if they feel that it's a zero-sum game, either it's me dead or you dead, then the brutality will continue. So I don't think it will bring him down in terms of squeezing the money supply by itself.
Ashraf al-MOKDAD, do you fear that if sanctions do start to bite in Syria, they may have the effect of hurting the Syrian people more than the government?
No, I don't think that. I think the Syrian people really want the sanction. Look, let me explain to you about what shabiha means. Shabiha in Syria, which is by the tens of thousands, they actually getting paid quite a bit of money to carry on to do the dirty job for Assad and his security services. So this money supply has to be diminished somehow. Assad cannot print more money because the lira will crash down, and then whoever is standing up with the regime at the moment to get more benefit will actually leave him. Whatever the results of this sanction will be beneficial to the people of Syria. We doubt that it will work, you know, immediately. Iran is opening a supply of money to Assad, but we think by the time this sanction settled, and it will be harder and harder for Iran to help Bashar. And also remember, the Iraqi government came up now by order of Iran to actually help Assad. So it's not going to be fast, but it will take quite a bit of effect later on, and it's very a moral boost to the Syrian people. So yes.
So where do you think the business elite in Syria fits into all of this? As these sanctions start to bite and the international pressure continues, are they going to be forced to make a choice as to where their loyalties lie?
I think they start making the choice at the moment. If you look at Aleppo, it's the commercial capital of Syria, and Aleppo was quiet for a long time. But if you notice, for the last 2 weeks, Aleppo started coming out, started moving, because they can't be milked as long as this. They never thought this will last that long. They have to pay weekly. The regime were forcing them to pay the shabiha and pay them weekly. So how long, you know, the pity how long the wallet gonna be? So you could see that last 2 weekends. Aleppo were coming out. Same in Damascus. The very expensive neighborhood start coming out. So yes, he's losing grip on the elite. I'm talking about the money elite, not yet on the military elite.
Rosemary Hollis, the political and business elite in Syria, while they have tacitly supported Assad over the years, they do fear the uncertainty of the aftermath without him, don't they? If he's gone.
I think it's crucial, the point that you're making. The point that you're making here about the merchant elite. For sure, they will have been most directly affected by this decision by the United States and Europeans to part company totally with the regime and impose the sanctions, because that's a signal to them that there is no future with Assad in terms of rehabilitation in the international community and all that that means for their businesses. So for them, there was a hope, and I think a number of them actually hoped that Assad could come around. Obviously, Bashar's brother was the one held principally responsible for the security crackdown and the greatest brutality, and there was much speculation as to whether Bashar al-Assad himself was powerless or without direction, not really in charge anymore. And that had already got the merchant elite worried that he couldn't turn the situation around. Now they know that even if he did finally manage to get it together and win by brutality, he will be shunned by the whole of the international community, so it won't do any good.
Ashraf al-MOKDAD, just in the minute or so that we have left, what do you think it is ultimately going to take to remove Assad from power? Is it one particular thing inside Syria? Is it a combination of things outside? What is going to be the final tipping point?
Well, we in the opposition, we have like 3 scenarios, which is We're hoping for the best of them. The best of them, really, if there's a split in the elite and the clean hand will do something about Assad and his thugs. We think the possibility is getting bigger and bigger now with international stand. So we're hoping, we are, our ears open, our hands actually open to the people inside the elite, military elites, if they want, like, you know, to split out of, from Assad regime. The other scenario, it's, which is more sort of really not what we want at all. Even we are opposition, to actually to arm ourselves, or the Syrian people to arm themselves. The consequences of that really severe aftermath. This
all
is
right. Well, we are going to have to leave it there because we are unfortunately out of time on the discussion. But we will certainly be following events in Syria and how they play out over the next few weeks and months. But for now, I want to thank both of our guests for taking part in the discussion. In London, Rosemary Hollis, and in Dubai, ASHRAF MOKDAD. Many thanks for your time. And thank you for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. You can take part in the conversation anytime, remember, with your comments and suggestions. You can just email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. The latest news is up next. Bye for now.